maybe the idea behind this really vital topic came from an in-person event that we hosted at VIA, that VIA hosted. Gosh, time flies when you're having fun. I think it was late February, early March. Don't hold me to it. And anyway, that was all about best business practices today when it comes to your website and your overall digital presence. And something that we touched on quite a bit was this term called website engagement. And so the questions that came about during that event really lent itself to understanding that there was a greater desire to learn a bit more about this topic. You know, what is website engagement? Just so that you know, because I like to know this when I am, and for some reason it's not advancing. So hold on one second, folks. I'm so sorry. Um, let's see. It is sharing. Okay. And is everyone seeing me now? Okay, great. And here we go. Now we should be able to go through this. And wow, I apologize. Here we go. And so what are we covering today? There are 13 slides, including the header slide and the thank you slide. So really there's 11 slides of just a lot of information. What we're going to cover today, engagement. What is it and why does it matter? Your website, best practices, and how these best practices are going to impact your engagement and improve your ranking within search results. We're also going to lightly touch on social media, how to leverage that. And again, all of this goes back to how does it contribute to your engagement? Content, if you're already thinking, if this is going to be a lot of talk about content, I know, but you know, how are we going to pull it all together? Or just in general, you're like, what content really matters? What does affect my engagement? We're going to cover you on that. We're also going to talk about SEO and that direct link that SEO has with engagement. There's SEO that tends to be part of your website as a whole, just how it's built. And then there's also something that's SEO as a service. And we're going to touch a little bit on the differences, or more importantly, really what does SEO as a service provide? This is in no way a sales pitch. This is really because we get this question a lot. You know, what are the differences? We're going to touch on that a bit more because it really is a key aspect to your engagement. And then when to get help. You know, we'll cover that. Maybe you've got the need and you've got the enthusiasm, but do you have the time? So let's run through this. For anyone that might have attended the in-person event earlier this year that we mentioned, don't worry, we touch on just a few of the topics very lightly. For anyone that did not attend, you're not going to be lost. I'm touching on the key points there. And let's get started. So engagement. What is website engagement? What is this that we're talking about? Well, before I click on the answer, let me explain. About a year and a half ago, close to 2 years, Google really fundamentally changed their algorithm metrics. And they went from being kind of a negative perspective in that they were looking at the abandonment rate of your website to now focusing on the engagement rate of your website. So rather than seeing how many people were leaving, they turned their focus to how many people are staying and for how long and what are they doing. This was such a huge change that their analytics were completely different in terms of how they measured engagement and how they measured abandonment, which meant for some of you, you might realize that as of July of 2 years ago, you weren't able to really comprehensively compare anymore your website metrics because there was a hard stop and Google kind of started like a refresh or a reset button and started looking at things very differently. So with that focus on engagement, there's been quite a learning curve. And now just this year in 2025, there has been a systemic change across the board with what engagement means. And so this is where we're at right now. And this is why it's such a hot topic. So what is website engagement? It's the metrics that help you understand your visitor behavior to your website. And that matters because then that is now seen as a site performance score. And that site performance score is what leads to you moving up in search results on Google. Now, I know that there's other search engines out there, but let's face it, the biggest in the hill right now is Google. And we're going to talk about some other things that are rising quickly too. So why does it matter? Well, I touched on it a little bit because again, it talks about what leads to your improved, search ranking. But more than that, this is kind of the golden goose. It's what folks more often than not ask about. Like, well, how do we know that our website's working? We have Google Analytics. We're not really sure where to look. We can see what pages people visit, but really, what does that matter in the scheme of things? Well, by understanding and measuring how visitors are interacting with every single page on your website, which goes back to the relevancy and the quality of the content on that page, that directly influences, again, where you rank in search results. So your engagement score matters because it shows how well, this is kind of a too long didn't read. You want to go back and share with the team, like, what was this whole webinar about? It's explaining why your engagement score is vital because it shows how well the content on your website pages is matching what people are looking for when they come. And that's the long, like I said, long story short. So engagement overall. Engagement isn't just one single metric. It's actually a bunch of metrics that get pulled together that then create this score. Now, in a minute, we're going to talk about Google Analytics. And I mentioned, for those of you that might have joined us just as we were starting, if you've got two screens and you want to pull up the Google Analytics for your own website, please feel free. This is absolutely a great opportunity to kind of keep your eye on things while we're talking about it. And if you'd like to navigate to a specific page on your Google Analytics, I'd recommend that you click on reports in the upper left corner, and you're going to see there's several options. You're going to see engagement as one of them. And you want to consider clicking on overall or pages and screens. Either of those is going to give you some interesting numbers, and we're going to do a much deeper dive on that. And if you're not doing that right now, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you an example, and then we're also going to talk about it a bit more throughout the webinar. Okay, so key website engagement metrics. There's the engagement rate. That's something I lightly touched on. So that's the percentage of sessions where users are actively engaged. Well, what does actively engaged mean? Well, it means that they've stayed on a page for at least 10 seconds, that they've navigated to a second page, and that they've completed a call to action. They've completed a form, they've submitted it, they've made a phone call, they've clicked on your email button, and any of those are considered a completed call to action. So what we're looking for is to get as many of these three areas, these three activities, I should say, completed. Now, maybe you get folks that when they land, whatever that first page is, now it might be your home page, or it might be a specific page if it's coming from, say, a social media post or from an ad. The idea is wherever they land, that first page they're on, that they stay on, not because they can't find the content, but because they find it so interesting. And that then there's something on that page that helps them understand where there's more information to another page that's going to be beneficial to them. And then lastly, that they then complete a call to action. We're going to talk about this just a little bit in a deeper dive, a little bit about your website in a minute. But again, this is the rate, your engagement rate, that's the key thing. Now let's talk a little bit then about that's all what factors in, but what are those more specific areas that you should be looking at? And all of these you can see in your Google Analytics. And again, we're going to get to it in just a moment. The average engagement time. This is also known as dwell time. This is the amount of time someone stays on your website. We also need to take a look at the events per user. That's how many clicks, how many different things does someone click on when they're visiting within one visit. Now, as we know, you don't want really great content to be, say, 3 or 4 clicks deep. But on the other hand, if these are valuable clicks where they're on a page with some great content, and maybe they have an opportunity to click on a case study that's on that page, and then from the case study page, now they click on the RFQ. The crawling that's going on the back side of your website that's keeping track of all of this activity is rewarding you when you've got a path like that that successfully shows that you are delivering the content that the visitor is looking for. That's drastically different than someone landing, say, on your homepage, and they've got to go 3 or 4 clicks in before they really find out more about your specific products or services. So you can kind of see the difference. One is weighted is much more important than one where maybe the content or your navigation is clumsy. We're going to get to navigation in a minute. Page views per session. It's pretty straightforward. It's how many different pages in a single session did a user view. And scroll depth. Wow. Okay, this is a biggie. This measures how far down someone scrolls on a page. So this goes again back to the idea of how is the content laid out on your website page? Do you have great content that pulls people in when they land at the top? And then more content in an engaging design or page layout that keeps folks scrolling down so that they continue to find more and more information that's relevant to what they're looking for. Again, if someone simply scrolls part of the way down and they don't go any farther and there is more content, that works against you because that means that the user didn't understand or they weren't interested because that content didn't match up to what they wanted. Bounce rate and video engagement. So even though there's this shift and we really only care, to be honest, about engagement rate, bounce rate isn't like it's completely gone away. It's still there. It's measured a little bit differently, but it's really not part of your overall engagement rate. It's not really considered. So I bring it up so that you're not necessarily focused on it and don't put too much time in it. If it's a very high rate, like let's say more than 50%, that is an indicator then that you might be struggling a bit with keeping folks on your website. And there's going to be other indicators that we're going to look at. But much more important, this more proactive, positive mindset is your engagement rate. And then video engagement. We're going to talk about that a bit more in just a minute. But your video engagement, that's going to track not only the number of views, but it's also going to track the completion rate, who watches the video all the way through. So that's going to tell you a little something about, is it too long? Is it captivating? Is it something that, again, is resonating that's useful to the person that's visiting? So when we talk about engagement, and I kind of went off a little bit on a very intentional tangent about dwell time or that visit, an average single page visit should hover somewhere around a minute. When you look across the industrial industry, it's about 52 seconds. And blogs might be a little bit closer to 2 minutes. Here are the key contributors to dwell time. So this is an example. Here is, again, this is from Google Analytics. Reports is up here, and just for space and so that the words weren't too tiny, the font size, I kind of kept it here. The only thing you're missing is the word reports up here. So I've gone down to engagement and I've clicked on engagement overview. I also mentioned pages and screens, which is a slightly different look, but here for the engagement overview, for those of you that are doing this right now, or maybe you're doing it later when you get this in your email, you want to look and see under the overview, what is this average time per active user? This is great. This is what you want to see. You want to see somewhere around a minute, and then the engaged sessions per active user. So what that means is that's the percentage of sessions that have a user that's continuing to click through and go to other pages. So if you've got somebody that's hovering at 83%, you're in good shape. I'm kind of guessing we might have some questions on this, but we'll keep going. So again, key contributors to your dwell time, content quality, load speed of the pages. That includes if there's images on there, if there's video embedded on there, user intent. Man, we're going to have a fun conversation about that a little bit later. And then a user-friendly design, otherwise known as your navigation and page layout. Okay, which leads us to talking a little bit about best practices and the topics that we've covered so far should be really giving you a little bit of insight into just how important your website best practices are. So here's some key ideas to keep in mind. On your homepage, keep content at the top of your homepage really straightforward. Highly recommend that you use simple, straightforward language, whether it's a phrase or a sentence that talks about your key products or services in a simple statement with a dynamic image of your work. I'm talking about on your homepage. This can also hold true to the interior pages as you navigate across, but it's especially important on your homepage. This caused quite a bit of discussion, I will say, this next bullet point at the in-person event that we held and in other panel discussions that I've participated in. So it bears repeating because this comes as a bit of a shock to many people. As we are halfway through practically 2025, it's very important that you avoid videos at the top of any website page, especially your homepage. Never have them on autoplay, and really try to avoid image carousels as well. And here's why. Engagement. Engagement scores are very dismal for websites that have anything auto-playing at the top of the page. By and large, that content is welcome farther down the page, where you have an opportunity to give folks a summary off to the side so they know what it is that they're going to be watching. Really can't stress enough to please try to avoid auto-playing anything. All of your videos should be hosted on YouTube on your business's channel. Now, there's a lot of pushback about having videos on YouTube. Here's what I'm going to say. Now, obviously, it's your company's decision, but YouTube, outside of Google, YouTube is the top social platform where folks go to find information about products, services, or just cool stuff they want to learn about. And having a YouTube channel is free. Now, you can choose to have a presence on YouTube that is relatively robust, meaning you're regularly posting videos to it. You have an opportunity to add quite a bit of a description in. You get to put in, it's roughly 800 words for the description, all of which is searchable. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a sec. And furthermore, it gives you the opportunity to really build a resource on YouTube, which is an extremely relevant channel right now when it comes to engagement. Videos are becoming really one of the top areas where we're seeing huge growth, especially from a search engine optimization standpoint, or SEO. And so by not having videos loaded on the back end of your website, you're not going to be slowing down load time on those pages. You're also not going to be auto playing. And just think of your own practices. You know, often than not, when you attend one of these things and there's some stuff in there that you're not really sure you agree with, or it's not what your company wants to do, great. But just consider your own use. When you're visiting a website, if a video auto plays, first of all, what if you've forgotten to have mute on? You know, do you really want something blasting right away with anything being said? And do you find it distracting? Are you actually learning anything about that company by a video playing? Or are you just trying to scan the page first to understand whether this is even the right place to be? More often than not, you're scanning the page first to find out if this is where you should be. And then the video is a great idea. Carousel, image carousels are really kind of in that same boat. You know, don't overwhelm folks with them right away. If you can, try not to have them automatically scroll. Give folks the carrots on either side so they can choose whether or not they want to go through them. This really is just a huge change. Even 2-3 years ago, many websites were being built with a video at the top or a carousel at the top. And one of the questions that I got quite a bit after the presentation last was, yeah, but that's how we show what our products and services are. How would anybody know what we do if we don't have them up there? The reality of it is no one does know what you do because they're not clicking on them right on the home page, right at the top. You can give a simple overarching statement at the top with one relevant image. Maybe it's a hero shot of all of your products. And then just a little bit further down, you have a golden opportunity because you've captured that person's attention. They've landed, they've verified that, yes, this is where they want to be. They want to learn more. Then you can list what you do. Again, keep in mind, folks really want to be able to scan. They don't necessarily immediately want to sit and watch when they land on your site. When they're more interested and they're at that point in the buyer's journey, then a video is a great tool. But don't hit people over the head or too early in it because they're probably not ready. Okay, content is still king when it comes to your website best practices. So again, the copy, the images, the video, they should all be relevant, and your content should be written by a human. Be sure all of your images are tagged and sized correctly. When you have images that aren't sized correctly, that's what leads to slow load times. The biggest reason for someone to abandon your website pretty quickly is if a page doesn't load. So it's one of the top reasons. And think about, again, your own practices. If you land on a website and something's not loading, don't you just kind of go, ah, forget it, and you close it out? The reason I want to just touch on this is this. This isn't going to be a whole discussion on AI, but it's vital to mention it once, and it's going to be mentioned again a little bit later. Algorithms are sophisticated enough to understand when content is AI generated. And that doesn't matter if you're using ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini, um, it already knows. And not only are you not benefiting from that content, you're getting penalized for using that content. Strongly recommend using those as tools. They help you get ideas started. They might help you summarize something relatively complex in your industry, but then go back and read it and you're going to recognize right away that doesn't sound like a real person. And the idea is that you want your content to be readable, to be engaging, that folks understand what they're reading. Website best practices. I already talked a bit about YouTube, but just keep in mind links to your website. There are mechanisms where you can shut off YouTube so that it doesn't autoplay another video that might be a competitor. Now, that might be something that's achievable with your current website platform, or perhaps your website's built on something that doesn't have it. But like, for instance, WordPress, which is what 80% of the websites in the world are built in, has a mechanism for a plugin where you can shut it off so it doesn't auto go to the next video that it finds is relevant. I mentioned how YouTube allows 800 words for video description. That's about 5,000 characters. The first 150 are what gets displayed in search results, so make them count. Use your keywords in those first few words, and then make sure that there's always a call to action in the description that either sends folks to your website, which would be primary, or to social media, or maybe even to some other content. But make sure that it's mobile friendly. Got to mention that too. Okay, and then something that's been really growing and building steam is something called configurators or conditional logic RFQs. So in terms of engagement, these are amazing. If you imagine your RFQ form from your website, and imagine if rather than simple open text boxes that folks have to complete, if they're able to make selections, whether it's from a drop down or radio buttons, that helps navigate them through whether or not a product that you offer is what they need. And imagine if all the options for each level of decision making was there, and then they could hit submit in order for someone on your sales team to reach back out with a quote. First and foremost, it takes time for a person to work through that. But when they're laid out correctly and they're streamlined, the engagement scores are off the chart. It takes time, someone's completing a call to action, and then more often than not, they're navigating to other pages, maybe to verify, okay, is this what I really want? All right, I'm going to come back now and click on that page as well. Streamline your navigation. So again, it's vital to take a look at the navigation on your website. This is really how you get judged or critiqued, as it were, when your site's being crawled. The order in which you've got things in your upper navigation. This has become the standard. This isn't like a one-off that we're just kind of making up. This is what's expected, and this is what search engines like Google are looking for. Your products and services should be first, not your about, not resources, not industry. It should really be what it is you do. Then if you want to have content that's specific to individual industries, you can pop your industries in. And or if you have resources, resources are a great tool on your website. You get exponentially so much benefit from them. But what are they? Well, resources can be all of the spec sheets maybe that you have under your products and services on the individual pages. They might be a blog that you're doing. They might be a corporate brochure. They might be videos that you're doing. You can have all the videos hosted on YouTube. They can be searchable there, but then they can also be found on your website. So resources, great, great, great. You get all of the search engine optimization from your resources. So it behooves you to have as much content as possible tucked away in your resources. You can also have it scattered throughout your website on relevant pages, but then again, they're all in one collective spot. Again, going back to where somebody might be in their buyer's journey, being able to find the information they want quickly and easily without having to scroll through a bunch of different product pages. And a gallery. If we're talking about videos, we should talk about a gallery. Obviously, you can take some amazing images with your phone, making sure that they're sized correctly and that they're tagged. If an image is not tagged on your website, it's basically a black hole and you get dinged when it comes to search results. So as Google's crawling the back end of it, if it hits an image and it can't read what it is because you haven't said what it is, or it just says image 001 ABC, you're going to get dinged. Then you get to talk about yourself in the about. And then you have the contact us or an RFQ or what have you. Quick word about the about page. The about page is becoming a highly used area on a website, believe it or not. In fact, there's growing statistics that show that when someone lands on your website, they're actually navigating to the about page first. And you might think, well, then why don't I put that first? They might go to it first, but then they tend to not go back to it. They're really then focused on what it is you do. And when they keep returning to your website, they're going to what you do. The reason that the about page is becoming so important is that as we have folks that have moved into decision making roles now, they really want to understand who it is that they're working with. What's your company culture? What is your mission? Do you have company values? What about your commitment to sustainability? Those are all topics that would be great that you are sure to have on your about page. I'm going to touch on social media. And again, we can come back to this if you have any questions, but it really does tie in again to engagement. So the only purpose to have a presence on social media is that you're driving traffic to your website. It's not about how many followers you have or how many connections or anything else. It's really about driving traffic to your website. And the reason we say that is that you can provide really relevant copy, again, images and all the rest of it, on your website. And so by almost teasing folks on social media, you can have some of this. It's almost a snapshot. It's a little bit smaller, and then you're driving them to your site. You can use a content calendar to map it out and then share the workload with folks on your team. I've got an example in here. We're going to just talk about it real briefly. But again, when we're talking about content, content is king. A great way to think about social media is that it's the window to your business and that your website is actually the front door that invites people in to learn more. So when you keep that in mind in terms of the content that you're developing, it is somewhat of a snapshot to what your business does. And then you're driving them to your website to get them even more interested. Again, this goes back to search intent. Where are people in the buyer's journey? And why are they learning about your business? This is where social media can do a tremendous amount of heavy lifting that really benefits your business, gets you in front of the right people, and then drives that engagement score. When it comes to making connections, this is an analogy that I think really helps folks kind of understand where it's at. Don't overwhelm anyone on social media when you're trying to establish some connections and followers. Treat it like you would when you're meeting somebody in person, say at an expo and it's happy hour. You don't want to just blurt out, here's who I am, here's what I do, this is what we sell, this is the service we provide. Probably going to turn people off. For instance, like on LinkedIn, you can already see who's interacting, you can see their profile, you understand everything that they do. A much better approach would be to just join in the conversation with companies or folks that you're interested in learning a bit more about and maybe ultimately collaborating by just taking a more friendly approach, maybe making a comment, wait to reach out, maybe wait a day or two, maybe wait longer, just kind of see what that interaction looks like. Follow organizations that you want to work with or that you would, in other words, provide services for or products for and engage in their activity. Again, this is just, the same idea. Engage in it. Don't blast somebody. And social media, kind of here's a final word on it. This is from Pew Research. These numbers came out at the very end of 2024. So right now, the percentage of adults that say that they ever use YouTube is right at the top. And you can see that YouTube really took off and kind of came into existence in 2018, where it really started to even register. You can see the drop down. There's Facebook, and many of you might think, I don't really think Facebook is relevant. Facebook definitely skews more social than business. But the uniqueness about YouTube is there's a lot of business in there. A high percentage of the videos on YouTube have directly to do with a business. So just keep that in mind. That's why we're talking so often about it. There's interesting stats about men versus women and age and what have you, but overwhelmingly, when you put all of them in the same bucket, it comes up this high. Okay, and I promise there's an easy way to build a year's worth of social media content in 1 hour. Please feel free to really look at this. This is something that we use internally at our agency, and we are a Google house. So we use the Google suite of products. So this is just a Google sheet. There are many free tools out there that help you with content calendars. Go as complex or as simple as you'd like. The main thing is just use it. At a really high level. You want to understand the date, either it's a specific date or it's just week one or however you want to do it. What's the point? What is it that you're trying to get across on your post? What are you linking to? It's a great reminder. What specific page on your website? Don't send everybody to the home page. If you're writing about a specific service that you provide when it comes to welding, then make sure that you're sending people to your welding page. Keywords. There's a movement going on right now that hashtags are becoming more and more irrelevant. That is hand in hand with this idea that engagement is so important. And engagement, if you haven't caught on already, is holistically about the type of content that you have. Is it relevant? Does it hit the mark? Is it from a perspective of subject matter expertise? It's not just one word that's thrown in there to drive people to go to a page and then they get there frustrated and find there's really nothing that they care about. Unfortunately, hashtags have become a cheat code and people have started to throw them in on their posts on social media and even on websites. And it leads to a lot of frustration and a poor user experience. Hence, that engagement, meaning all of the content in a specific page is being viewed. All of the content in a specific post is being crawled and identified as being good or not. And then last but not least, what kinds of posts should you be writing? Well, about half the time, 50% of the time, talk about what you do, talk about some of your products, some of your services. Then try to split the rest of it up a little bit, evenly. And this can be over the course of a few months, it can be over the course of the entire year. But you want some to be a little bit of a conversation about your company culture. You might be celebrating a company anniversary or individual team member anniversaries, or maybe it's a summer barbecue that's coming up or what have you. Be sure to post on those on social media. Folks do want to see that, and make sure that it has a spot on your website as well. Thought leadership, that really just goes back to think about, again, sharing the fun of everyone contributing to content, not only on social media, but on your website. You've got subject matter experts right there in the building. It might be you. It might be someone that at the thought of having to write an entire post just overwhelms them. Well, then pick their brain, cherry pick a couple of key ideas from them, and then plan spontaneity, which is such a fun one. Something may come up, who knows? You may decide that a new piece of equipment's coming in, and that's not spontaneous, excuse me, but it's planned. It's definitely planned. So think about that. Think about, how do you want to capture that new piece of equipment coming in? Do you want to do quick iterative images that you can pull together in a short video clip, what have you? The key thing is use a calendar. It really does take the obnoxious fear and frustration out of building content. And if you're not sure where to start, look at the navigation on your website. Right there, those are probably 4, 5, 6 different pages. And then the drop downs alone, each of those is at least one post. If you're wondering how often should you post, you should be trying to post, say, on LinkedIn at least once a week, if not twice a week. If that's too much to take on right away, well, then try to do it every other week. But you can see where if you build a content calendar out in an hour, you should be able to build content out for the entire year, posting once a week, just by leaning into what you have on your website. I guarantee it. Okay, content development. I know you're thinking at this point, maybe, all right, this is supposed to be about engagement, and I just keep hearing about content. And you're right. So content is king, but here's the deal. I've touched on it lightly, but it bears repeating. You really need to ensure that the content that you're developing is written by a human and that it's easy to read. Consider the fact that you're supposed to have content on your website and on social media posts that is understandable by somebody at a 5th grade level. That doesn't mean you can't use sophisticated scientific terms or industry terms, but remember to put them in context so that the rest of it is understandable. At a minimum, someone should be looking at your website on a quarterly basis. I'd love to say someone should be looking at it monthly, but let's be realistic, maybe quarterly. More often than not, something new is now being offered, and maybe it didn't make it to the website, or it's mentioned not in the level of attention that it should get. Perfect case in point is there may be a service that you provide now that has become a much larger percentage of your business than when it was introduced 2 or 3 years ago. You're going to want to make sure then that that service is more prominently displayed not only on the home page, but on wherever your products and services go into a deeper dive. Maybe it was third or fourth down on the page. Now you're going to want to consider moving that up to the top, because where folks find the content they want is toward the top of the page. So remember, it all matters. Your content, your website, your social media, all of it should be developed, not so much saying, here's what we do. It should be more from your customer and your customer's customer perspective. It's more, your challenging project can be handled with our approach or solution. It's a little bit of a mind twist there, but once you start doing it, it makes a whole lot more sense. And again, it goes back to engagement. You want engaging content. You want the user to feel pulled in, that you understand what it is they're looking for and you're delivering that information. Your overall engagement score is a leading indicator that your website content is relevant, that the content is hitting its mark. And you need to consider search intent. Search intent is kind of a jargon, I would say, that not everyone is at the same spot in their buyer's journey for your products or services. And so we're going to talk a little bit more about that in another slide, but the reality of it is some folks are just kicking the tires. And so if all they find when they land is really specific specs, they might not even understand that what you're saying, and they're probably going to leave. So there is a definite method to the madness, as it were, to ensure that folks are finding content at all those different touch points in your buyer's journey. Okay, so as long as we're talking about search intent and we're talking about buyer's journey and website engagement and all that good stuff, we're going to touch base on SEO, or search engine optimization. So just like content and content development, SEO is that other really important part of the entire metric when it comes to engagement. So there's SEO that is, I'm going to make a broad characterization here. That's part of your website foundation, that how your website is built. On the back end, you have the ability to put in keywords, that there are meta descriptions, that there are title tags. There's all these cool techie SEO terms that help search engines, when they crawl the back end of your website, understand what the content is. Because while it's reading every sentence, it also needs to understand how you've laid the content out. So those titles matter, where they're laid out matter, what those descriptions on the back end matter, because those meta descriptions, those are those little fragments that get shown in search results when someone's looking to get more information, and your company pops up and it shows just a quick little summary of what your company does, and then maybe it shows the 3 or 4 pages that folks can navigate to, and then there's those fragments that are right next to it, and it can be maybe 10 words, maybe it's 15 words. It just depends on the number of characters. Very often, folks get frustrated and they say, but that's not really what we do, or that doesn't really summarize what we do. How do we get Google to fix that? Well, I got good news and I got bad news. I'll go with the bad news first to get it out of the way. The bad news is you can't tell Google what to do, and you can't tell Google what to put in a meta description. Try as you may, you can't. They're still going to pull what they want to pull. The good news is they will pull based on what the content is on the page. So this is where, going back to that idea that, keywords, don't use them willy-nilly, don't throw them in, and then not have any other supporting content that relates back to it. This is where you're going to get caught up if you've been doing that. And this is where you really want to spend some time making sure, especially for your products and services, that you're putting great content in. Yes, there's keywords in there that are relevant, that really speak to what you do, but also make sure that the content with it is relevant and supports that same idea. You can edit meta descriptions on the back end of your website, absolutely. But Google sees those as mere suggestions. So you can't really cheat and put a bunch of keywords in your meta description and then hope that Google pulls it up so that when people search and your company lands in their search results, that they see those keywords and they're like, yep, these are the guys. it doesn't quite work that way. You just want to make sure that the content, again, within a section on a page, and you're going to do this for each section, and the most important content should be at the top because that's where Google places, again, the most emphasis. So really quick, think about this for a second. So what if it toward the top of your website pages, you've got a carousel with images? Do you think that's working in your favor? Probably not. Remember how we talked about make sure it's a simple, straightforward statement on your homepage and even at the top of those interior pages that talks about what you do and what that page has. You're greatly increasing the likelihood that Google's going to pull that information and drop that into your meta description. Okay, so when it comes to SEO as a service, this is a more robust practice, and there's lots of great companies out there that do this. So again, this is not any kind of a sales pitch. This is just a question that comes up so often, and people ask, "Well, what's SEO? I thought I already had it. What is it doing?" So here's what a really active SEO as a service program looks like. They're working hard to improve your website engagement, all those fun things we've been talking about. And they do that by increasing your visibility. So getting you found more frequently for the folks you want to be in front of. And they do that by bringing in and attracting organic traffic. So folks that wouldn't normally find you, they're putting in search terms that are going to be relevant to what you do or the product that you produce, and then optimizing the user experience when they do get to your website. So in a nutshell, if you're going to be explaining this to anybody on your team, what is SEO as a service? Well, it's about optimizing those keywords. It's improving your website speed, some of those same things that we just talked about, making sure images are the right size, that videos are linked to YouTube, not necessarily embedded on your website, that the content is readable. This goes back to AI generated content. Is it really readable? Can somebody scan it and easily understand what's being said? Screen responsiveness. So you want to make sure that your website is responsive to 4 screen sizes: full-size desktop, laptop, tablet, and mobile device. If it's not, you're going to get dinged so many different ways, and I'm sure you already know it, so I don't have to say any more about it. High quality content, that's kind of like a, man, how many times am I going to keep saying that? But it matters. Again, goes back to not only the keywords that are at the top, but also the content overall. The rest of the SEO as a service, this is kind of a generic, and again, this isn't a whole presentation on SEO. They identify and measure key metrics. That means they're looking at so many different aspects of your analytics, and then things that I guarantee you've never even heard of, like website toxicity and all kinds of other good stuff, as well as looking at your competitors and what they're doing and what's working and what's not. Again, it's not shilling for SEO as a service projects. It's just letting you know there's an awful lot that goes into it that is above and beyond the SEO work that you might have already done with your website when it was developed. And I'm going to really kind of close things up here with this idea about search intent, because I've mentioned it a number of times now in this presentation, and it's really vital to understand that when it comes to website engagement, you can't forget about where somebody is at or why they're even coming to your website. I think oftentimes it's easy to get into this idea that somebody wants to know everything about your company right away because they're ready to buy, or they're pretty sure, or you think they are. But in reality, there's kind of these 4 types of search intent that really cover everyone out there that's searching. And keep in mind then, when you have content that you're developing for your website or you're reviewing, and we've talked a little bit about how the perspective should be from your customers or your customers' customers. That's how the content should be written. It shouldn't just be all about, here's what we do. Keep in mind that there's these levels, and they get obviously deeper and deeper. Informational. Again, this is just kicking the tires. This is somebody that maybe doesn't know a whole lot about stainless steel fabrication. So they're just trying to get some information. Maybe they didn't really use a long tail keyword in their search. They just did stainless steel fabrication near me. Maybe it's someone that's looking for a stainless steel fabricator near them. Well, if that's your business, if that's the service that you provide, when someone lands on your website and they go and they navigate to the page that's about stainless steel fabrication, Are you providing them with some introductory information, a little bit about what is stainless steel fabrication? How did it come about, for your business? Doesn't have to be long, but it should be enough to nurture them to help them understand what it means and how that happens. Now, you might be thinking, we've got mostly engineers that are coming to our website. We can't have such primary information like that. That may be true, but it's not going to hurt you to also have some nurturing content that's going to help folks that aren't at that level understand so they can go to their engineer and say, hey, these guys might be helpful. I'm not sure. I don't know enough about it, but could you take a look? But they're never going to get to that point if they don't even understand anything that's on your website. Navigational. So that's when someone's actually already knows your brand, they already know your name, and they're looking specifically for your website. Commercial. This is a good one. This is obviously when you're comparing. So in your own use, when you're comparing between two different companies to work with, or in your own personal life, if you're comparing gym shoes to buy or what have you, you want to be able to easily compare and research the products or services that are there. So again, this leans into that idea that if someone is coming to your website, you probably want to start with your products and services at the beginning for those that are ready for that. And then lastly, transactional. It is what it says. Somebody that's ready to buy, they're ready to start doing business. So keep in mind, folks can be searching, their intent can be at any of these levels, and they may quickly pass through them if the content on your website can engage them, keep them on your website, and pull them through all that information. Last but certainly not least, when should I get help? Your business, your team. There's a lot of information. Again, it's really content heavy slides, and it's meant to be a template for you to take back to the team and say, okay, here's this webinar I spent an hour on this morning. There was a lot of stuff thrown at it, but maybe these are some of the things we should look at. And I would say you should absolutely start with Google Analytics. Make sure it's installed on your website. Make sure you're looking at it. I'm guessing it would be you because you're attending this webinar, but maybe it's somebody else. And if it is someone else that's been looking, have they even been looking at engagement? Look at the trends. You can make all kinds of parameters. You can compare this year to last year and what have you. Understand what's happening with your website. And when you do that, then you can start to see which pages have the best traction. How long are people staying on a page? There's so much that's right there. We could do another entire webinar just on Google Analytics and engagement, but this was meant to give you more of a comprehensive understanding of what it is, why it matters, and tactical things that you can be taking on. So check your Google Analytics and then really do a deeper dive based on what you see there, on the content on the pages that you see that are maybe a little bit weak or that are surprising you that people aren't staying on. Is there an opportunity there to give more information, deeper understanding? Or maybe it's too deep and you got to pull back and add some content that's helping somebody that's at the very beginning of their search. If your website is lacking clear navigation, maybe you got a bunch of different things going on, maybe it's not screen responsive, any of those things. What's your time worth, or do you have a resource that's a good time to consider getting help? Again, VIA is a phenomenal partner. They can lead the way toward introducing you to any number of us agencies that all belong that can help. Or maybe you really understand what you need. You know that you need more content and you just don't have the bandwidth to get this going or to even keep it going. And that's it. That's the whole presentation, and we are at 56 minutes. Jessica?
They're just pulling. All right, Nancy, do we have any questions for anybody? Or did anybody have any questions for Nancy? Sorry.
That's okay. I have questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Nancy, I will say thank you so much because I have so many notes that I have taken today, not, just to share not only with my team, but also I think with all of our association members. So I hope everybody also got lots of great notes out of this. If you do have questions and you would like to share them, you can certainly share them offline with Nancy and myself. And we will be following up this video with a presentation as well as a survey. And then again, if you have any questions, you can submit those to us at that time. All right.
And
Thank
I
you
would
again,
say,
Nancy.
absolutely. And I would say, I just touched on it at the end, but Jess brought it up at the very beginning. If it's something that you'd be interested in learning more about Google Analytics, like what do we look at? What do we do? What should we be focused on? Please let Jessica know that that's a topic that you're interested in. And, whether it's me or if it's one of the other members, that they turn to. Google Analytics is just a treasure trove of information. So please don't let that key tool be just something that you're avoiding because it's kind of one more thing on your plate and you're not really sure what any of it means. Would love to talk about that. That could even be like a live one where we go through live and start to look at what all those metrics look like. This is really meant to be a companion to that. You can take literally this presentation and have your analytics pulled up and then start going through and looking at all of those key metrics that I talked about really at the very beginning and then throughout the presentation.
Thank you again, Nancy, for your time and your expertise. Everyone, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will be in touch with all of this content soon. Thank you.